Don in London, hello. May 7th, my video is all about recovery from addiction to substance or behaviour, both in my case, substance and behaviour. My substance, alcohol, my behaviour. Trying to be perfect, I guess. Striving to be perfect. Be the person you wanted me to be. Be in the right place, with the right people, with the right things. And these days it's quite different. One day at a time, simply finding out what is possible and what is not possible to do today, what I would like to do, what I have freedom to do, based on reality. So, alcoholic in recovery, what helps me, or has helped me? Friends, family, professional people, especially medical people. As the older I get in sobriety, I have acquired other ailments along the way, like type 1 diabetes, and understanding I had clinical depression, which is an ongoing situation day by day. So good days and bad days. It doesn't mean the world is going to fall apart, or I'm going to fall apart and the world is going to look terrible all the time. It just means that some of the time life ain't so good. But at the moment life is okay. So you could say that life is in balance, or I could say that. So I feel okay. Why? Because I'm doing the right thing on a daily basis to help me. And most of all, what helps me on a daily basis is the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for it, never can, never will. AA is full of unique, authentic people who speak for themselves where they choose. And they speak as they find on the day that we encounter them, in meetings or outside meetings, when we develop friendships as well as fellowship. So what is AA? As I say, I don't speak for it, but this is all about AA, because it helps me, and I want to share a message of experience, strength and hope. So this is the AA preamble coming up, shared at every meeting I go to, where what you see is what you get on a daily basis. So AA is what you encounter day by day, real people living real life and living recovery, good or bad, as it happens to be, whatever is going on. So the AA preamble: Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And whilst it says there, AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Everybody in the fellowship is allied to something or other. So we do have our own identity, which we retain, our own personality traits, which we have, and we do what we do. But the fellowship is about sobriety. So we meet every person from every walk of life in the fellowship, in meetings and in groups. So although fellowship is about one thing, everyone has their own particular, unique, authentic take on life, and that changes day by day as life experience teaches. And that's wonderful, because it's about one primary purpose: sober. And the 12-step program of AA program, 12 steps to live life, they somehow become integrated and part of how we deal with what we have on a daily basis. And that doesn't mean we have to follow rules or regulations or laws. It means we get freedom of choice based on life as it is right now. So the first 5 steps I've been covering one a month, and in line with this book, the Daily Reflections, and I'll read from that in a little while. But I'll just recap on the steps so far. So January, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So the admission that we were beaten or powerless over alcohol, that is, we couldn't stop doing it, and every time we did it life was unmanageable. I was able to admit that but then I realised I need to accept it on a daily basis. So life works without a drink inside me. Life works as it may do with what I know so far. And then step 2 in February, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And yesterday, or over the last couple of days, there's been an awful lot of talk or sharing in and around what is a higher power. Well, for me, my higher power is very simply just about everything around me is a higher power, because I'm learning life. So everything in life is about learning. So the nature, universe, providence, whatever you want to call it, feels like a higher power to me. But mainly I get my wisdom from others, and that is the greatest power of all, to keep on being informed by what is going on around us, people, places and things, and not deny it or wish ourselves somewhere else. So the higher power for me is about truth, love and wisdom, and some call that God. And then in step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And of course an understanding of God is always a personal matter, and we can in our lives be atheist, agnostic or believer, depending on our life experience and what our faith is and what our beliefs are. So whatever it is that you may call God, as long as it's not you, then step 3 will work. And it's, as I say, it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And for me that's all about living to good conscience, living to the truth, learning how to love and be loved back, and gaining wisdom from others. Step 4, April, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, is really a self-appraisal of our assets and liabilities, our personality traits. And the biggest personality traits I need to work on daily is too much fear, too often putting on a brave face, and a very thin ego when things go wrong and it cracks. So I'd rather have more faith, more courage and more confidence. And then in step 5, it's about sharing our inventory with another human being. So sharing to God, good conscience and another human being. And it reads exactly as, admitted to God, to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So the life story in step 4, we share. The reason why? Well, if we share it with another person, less likely that we keep secrets. But what I know about recovery is that things I missed in my first step 4 did come back as reminders, things I'd forgotten, things which suddenly burn me when I remember them. Then I share it with someone else, so I can get perspective on it and not be frightened of it. Because the worst thing is to be frightened of something we are powerless over. You need not be frightened if you're in fellowship or you have friends. And I will say that AA is not the only way to be sober. No one ever expects it to be the only way. If it were, it would be overwhelmed as a fellowship. It couldn't cope. So many alcoholics, so little time. So in step 5 from this book, just read a couple of paragraphs just to give a flavour of why it's so important. Step 5. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5, but scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. And what causes me aggravation is fearing something, feeling like I need to cover up and put on a brave face, and an ego which says I need not share what's bothering me. I can do it on my own. And everywhere I go, whenever I do that, I find myself in trouble because I'm being secretive or covering something up. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers, it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we would rather not remember. If we have to come to know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. So in a funny sort of way, I do a step 5 every day when I share here. And sometimes I share what's bothering me. And sometimes what bothers me most is the behaviour that I can have around what other people do and what other people are doing to other people. But I know sometimes it's none of my business, and sometimes I need to speak out and help a person who feels under pressure. And the worst pressure is often for newcomers when they share their truth, how they feel right now, why, and what they're trying to do about it. And sometimes people can be full of wisdom and share and help, and sometimes they can be full of it and be worse than helpful. They can be hurtful, judgmental, and when we encounter people like that, we know we can just let them go and stick with those who are genuinely trying to help us keep sober. And sober is what fellowship's all about. And I say that because it's very easy to get judgmental. We can sit in a room and listen to somebody and know they're on the wrong track, but sometimes we have to keep silent because it might be inappropriate for us to try and help them, and there can be many reasons for that, and wisdom from others and wisdom learned we find out. Anyway, daily reflections for today, May 7th. It says respect for others, and I guess that's where I'm coming from. Such parts of our story, respect for others, May 7th. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand, yet be unaffected. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. So when we share our life story, we're looking for our part in what happened, not to blame other people. Our part could be simply to be in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong people. Respect for others is the lesson I take out of this passage. I must go to any lengths to free myself if I wish to find that peace of mind that I have sought for so long. However, none of this must be done at another's expense. Selfishness has no place in the AA way of life. When I take the 5th step, it's wiser to choose a person with whom I share common aims, because if that person does not understand me, my spiritual progress may be delayed. And spiritual progress is facing the truth, facing reality, being able to cope with life on life's terms. May be delayed, and I could be in danger of a relapse. So I ask for divine guidance before choosing the man or woman whom I take into my confidence. And that's so important. And I was very fortunate because in my early days I wrote to all the different health services asking, do you have any way of helping me deal with my issues and my problems and helping me keep sober? And ironically, there was a National Health Service Alcohol Service Treatment Centre in Soho, which is in the centre of London, the scene of many escapades on my part, because Soho, full of clubs, nightclubs, all sorts of things which are fascinating for a person who drinks and is living life large. And I was. So work hard, play hard, almost die hard. And at Soho I was admitted into a free programme where I was able to have a counsellor, and that counsellor, although not an alcoholic in recovery, had an extensive understanding of the 12 steps, and I did my step 4 and step 5 with him over quite a period of time, taking it step by step, just gently going through everything, all the hurts, all the pain, all the happiness as well. What made life work, what made life difficult, where were anger and resentment against others, and what was my anger and resentment like about myself. Well, I may have been a good judgmental person back there, or even objective in judgment, but I treated myself really hard. And of course, every time I looked at myself in drinking days, drinking was sought because it gave me oblivion from reality of me. So these days I feel much better because I don't have to hide, and when I start to hide, I have to say I feel like I'm hiding something. and then ask myself and share it with another human being. And it can be any human being. It doesn't necessarily have to be my sponsor or a person in the fellowship. It could be my family, or it could be somebody I trust. It could even be somebody on the bus, or somebody I know and meet in the street. That's how it works on a daily basis. Because if it's working on a daily basis, the problems are day-sized, the same size as the day, as are my feelings. And that's the way it works for me. Levelled to being one human amongst many, living in the day and making the best of the choices and freedoms I have. And with any belief system which suits me. And the same applies to you. So at the end of these videos on a daily basis, I will share the serenity prayer to God of good conscience, or whatever it is that you feel is right for you. And it's just a simple meditation of can do, can't do, and wisdom to know the difference. So the serenity prayer or meditation to God: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, always in the moment, hopefully, and just for today. Don in London, hello. May 7th, 2009. My video is all about recovery from addiction either to substance or behaviour. And I emphasise that at the beginning of my videos always, so you have a shrewd idea of what's coming. And I was addicted to alcohol. I don't know how long for, but I was a heavy drinker for a long time. I lived in a heavy drinking culture. It's called the United Kingdom. And 1 in 13 people in the adult population tend to get into difficulties around dependence on drink or substances or behaviour. So I'm not alone, thank goodness, and there are a lot of people out there in the world who have a clue how to live sober, and I guess I was very lucky. I had medical support, family support, community support, and the willingness in the end just to say, I cannot do this on my own anymore. And I've got to stop being frightened, I've got to stop isolating myself, and I've got to stop trying to use my willpower, my self-will, because self-will ran riot. And my best thinking got me into more drinking because I just couldn't cope, and I tried to find oblivion from myself. And how many times did I wake up in the morning thinking it would be better not to be here? I don't know, countless times, and that was in the last few years. So these days, a bit further on, and not drinking one day at a time, I have help, and I get most help via my fellowship, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I cannot speak for AA. No way. People who go to AA are unique and authentic, and when people come out of the room of an AA meeting, they're still unique and authentic. They only have one similarity, and that is being sober, or willing to be sober, or wishing to be sober, and actually being sober on a daily basis. So the gift for me in fellowship is I keep on hearing experience, strength and hope, and at the beginning of every meeting there is a preamble shared on this little card here, and I share it here because it slows me down into being in this one moment of reality, well, my reality, with as little denial as possible, and without filters, my thinking filters, so that my feelings and spiritual being can be. So my feelings, I don't know that they ever lie to me. I do know that my thinking would will them different. So I need daily sustenance, and part of that is doing prayer and meditation sometimes. I don't know whether I believe in God, or I'm an atheist or an agnostic. It just depends on how the day is going. And sometimes we exclaim, there is a God, and then sometimes we think, well, we think the other, don't we? Anyway, the preamble which is shared goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And those words at the end really count for me. Primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So recovery is important, and sharing the message is equally important. And as we are all unique and authentic, and we have a right to be here, even though it might not seem so some of the time, we are all equal sized when it comes down to nature and providence. We're all here on the same journey. But we are unique and authentic people. So the gift of AA for me is, I don't speak for it, cannot, will not, but I can share how it helps me on a daily basis. So that's what I do. And there are 12 steps of action for individuals, and 12 steps, 12 months, one a month. Step 5 for May reads as, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So when we admit it to a higher power, that where we are in terms of our balance of good and bad, which comes out of the fearless moral inventory, which is step 4, is making progress at an appropriate pace for ourselves. So we are unique and authentic, and the journey is slightly different for everybody, but we are similar, so we have enough of a connection to make community and society work, sometimes well and sometimes very badly. Anyway, that's where we're at. Evolution in our growth, spiritual growth, probably is best. I don't know about spiritual awakenings being bright sort of lightning bolts coming from the sky. Hasn't happened to me, and I haven't seen it happen to anybody else, but there is a tremendous relief in knowing that we're no bigger or smaller or less important than anybody else, and nobody can speak on our behalf. So that's me, and how I see the world this morning. But it might change, because lots of people send me information which helps just understand me on a daily basis, let alone anything else. The Daily Reflections book I use here, which gives us a reading each day, just to give us a bit of reflection and meditation. And it says here, respect for others. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. The rule is we must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. And this is all about step 5, sharing our assets and liabilities and what has happened to us with another human being. Sort of levels us out. Respect for others is the lesson I take out of this passage. I must go to any lengths to free myself if I wish to find that peace of mind that I have sought for so long, which is peace in the moment of now. However, none of this must be done at another's expense. Selfishness has no place in the AA way of life. When I take the 5th step, it's wiser to choose a person with whom I share common aims, because if that person does not understand me, my spiritual progress may be delayed, and I could be in danger of a relapse. So I ask for divine guidance before choosing the man or woman whom I'm to take into my confidence. And I guess we do that if we're part of a religious body. But AA is not religious as such. It's very spiritual. But people who have got religious beliefs go there, as do agnostics and atheists. So the door is wide open. And as Bill sees it, and I like this reading, which I'm going to share on page 95, called Spiritual Kindergarten, just so you know what it looks like. Co-founder wrote some bits down as they learned more wisdom as they went along over the years. So Spiritual Kindergarten. We are only operating a spiritual kindergarten in which people are enabled to get over drinking and find the grace to go on living to better effect, that is, seeing reality as it is. Each man's theology has to be his own quest, his own affair. So, we don't adopt the views, faith and opinions of others, we find our own. When the big book was being planned, some members thought it ought to be a Christian in its doctrinal sense. Others had no objection to the use of the word God, but wanted to avoid doctrinal issues. Spirituality, yes. Religion, no. Still others wanted a psychological book to lure the alcoholic in. Once in, he could take God or leave him alone as he wished. To the rest of us, this was shocking, but happily we listened. Our group conscience was at work to construct the most acceptable and effective book possible. Every voice was playing its appointed part. Our atheists and agnostics widened our gateway, so that all who suffer might pass through, regardless of their belief or their lack of belief. And you know what, that's so important, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of taking on and adopting the clothes of another person, when in fact what we need to do is be unique and authentic going in, coming out the same way, and dealing with our one similarity, which is to keep sober on a daily basis. And in the AA Big Book here, it's not the Bible, but it's pretty darn good, and it helps people do what they need to do to keep well. And it says on page 75, into action, a couple of paragraphs here. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory, that's step 4. And we are prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we are about to do and why we have to do it. He or she should realise that we are engaged on a life and death errand. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honoured by our confidence. I guess that's true, because we try and pick somebody who can help us. We pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark planning of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall away from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator and at oneness with nature and providence for me. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. And you know, well, that's so good, the spirit of the universe. So it allows people to be whoever they are and what they believe in, without hindrance, or let or hindrance, as people say. So when I say, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, it is just for one day, and it is a spiritual experience of reality without filters or denials. Hello, Don in London. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. In my case, the substance was alcohol, and my behaviour could be equally addictive around people, places and things. So these days, just trying to find a bit of balance in each day. And today I'm going to share from the 12 and 12, the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous, a fellowship of human beings keeping sober one day at a time. So it's simply a one-day program. And from the 12 and 12 I'll be reading out step 5. So step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and life became unmanageable when we drank, and it would do again if we did. Step 2, came to believe a power greater than us could restore us to sanity, and the higher power is, as an individual, me can choose. So I choose truth, love and wisdom as my higher power, and some call that God. But it's your higher power which counts. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood it. So I hand it over to the truth of now, love, how to love and be loved back, keep on learning that, and the wisdom which comes from other people. And step 4 was made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So we looked at the past, sorted out what were our assets and liabilities, and then in step 5 admitted to God, that's to the universe in my case, or as you come to believe for yourself, just admitted it to God, to ourselves and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. So that's what I'm going to read out today, step 5, and if anything occurs to me along the way, then I shall add in. So step 5, again, admitted to God, to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And I would actually also say secrets keep us stuck. So the more we are secretive about what we did in the past, the more stuck we can be with the fear of being found out. So step 5. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5. But scarcely any step is more necessary to long time sobriety and peace of mind. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. And in my case, my primary defects, fear, putting on a brave face, and ego, which keeps it all locked inside me. So fear of being found out, putting on the brave face, saying yes, everything's fine, and my ego saying if I let anybody in I might fall apart and they could destroy me. So that's just me. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers, and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, if we have come to know wrong thinking, know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to stop living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. So, confession is good for the soul, as long as we find a trusted person who we can share what's gone on. Then we have an opportunity to get out of our secrets which have kept us stuck. So intense though it is our fear and reluctance to do this, that many AAs at first try to bypass step 5. We search for an easier way, which usually consists of the general and fairly painless admission that when we drank, we were sometimes bad actors. Then, for good measure, we add dramatic descriptions of that part of our drinking behaviour which our friends probably knew about anyway. But of the things which really bother and harm us, we say nothing. Certain distressing and humiliating memories, we tell ourselves, ought not to be shared with anyone. These will remain our secret. Not a soul must ever know. We hope they'll go to the grave with us. And that's it. We bury and try and hide what really burns us. And if we actually admit it out loud, to ourselves, to God and another human being, as we choose, then we are aiming for freedom, freedom of choice and freedom of fear. Yet, if the AA's experience means anything at all, this is not only unwise, that is to keep them buried, but is actually a perilous resolve. Few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on step 5. Some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. Even AA old-timers, sober for years, often pay dearly for skipping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered from irritability, anxiety, remorse and depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Everybody had to confess his own, and that's most important. The 12-step program, especially step 4, gives us a toolkit to judge our own behaviour and look at our past, but it also gives us the opportunity to become quite expert and professional in unearthing other people's character defects. So the real problem is, if we are feeling wrong about ourselves, then we can look to the wrong in others. So when we see the defect of character in other people, which anger us, it's because we've got them too. How else would we spot them? Yes, carrying on, they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Everybody had to confess his own. The practice of admitting one's defects to another person is, of course, very ancient. It has been validated in every century, and it characterizes the lives of all spiritually centered and truly religious people. But today religion is by no means the sole advocate of this saving principle. Psychiatrists and psychologists point out the deep need every human being has for practical insight and knowledge of his own personality flaws, and for a discussion of them with an understanding and trustworthy person. So far as alcoholics are concerned, AA would go even further. Most of us would declare that without a fearless admission of our defects to another human being, we could not stay sober. It seems plain that the grace of God will not enter to expel our destructive obsessions until we are willing to try this. And this is trying to let go of all those secrets, all those hardships, all those burning feelings that come about where shame and guilt is involved with past behaviour. What are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of that terrible sense of isolation we've always had. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered the feeling that we didn't quite belong. And I felt that for a long, long time. Either we were shy and dared not draw near others, or we were apt to be noisy good fellows, craving attention and companionship, but never getting it, or at least to our way of thinking. There was always that mysterious barrier we could neither surmount nor understand. It was as if we were actors on a stage, suddenly realizing that we did not know a single line of our parts. That's one reason we loved alcohol too well. It did let us act extemporaneously, but even then, Bacchus boomeranged us back. We were finally stuck down and left in terrified loneliness. And for me, one of my careers kept me, well, actually I picked careers which would actually move me about the country or other countries, so that I would be involved with people during the day and be very extrovert, and sometimes socially be very extrovert by drinking, always putting on an act, but always trying to live to truth and learn wisdom from others, and never really sure about love. So it was very hard to connect and say, listen, I'm just learning how to be myself. I didn't know how to do that, because in my early life, cover up, don't let people know what's going on. It's the family secrets and all the rest of it. We don't talk about ourselves, and we don't talk about our feelings. So, goodness me, is it any wonder that secrets abound? And I didn't know how to behave, I suppose, and keep on learning how to behave and learn my feelings. Learn about why my feelings were there, why I had them, and it all got to extremes, because drink either made it possible to be sociable, or it made me want to isolate and hide away. So step 5, unlocking the door and letting it all out, meant it was okay to not know my feelings, not know what was going on for me, not so sure about the truth of what's really going on and how to interact with people. I mean, I was very good at acting and putting on a brave face, but when it actually came down to expressing my feelings of love, especially in relationships with the fair sex, well, I was always scared that I wouldn't be good enough, and I always tried harder to be perfect, until I became a very trying human. Anyway, continuing, and it's this terrifying loneliness that I can remember, long nights of writing poetry, drinking myself into oblivion, and then waking up in the morning thinking, what on earth did I do last night? Carrying on, when we reached AA, and for the first time in our lives stood among people who seemed to understand, the sense of belonging was tremendously exciting. We thought the isolation problem had been solved, but we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered many of the old pangs of anxious apartness. Until we had talked with complete candour of our conflicts and had listened to someone else do the same thing, we still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and God. And I emphasise again, it's the God of your understanding, or what God means to you. So I'll just say again, my understanding is very much what I've learned so far. It's the truth of now, how to love and be in love back, and wisdom which I get from others. So truth, love and wisdom, as I understand it, is God in my life, and that's a tremendously bigger and higher power than me. Maybe the ultimate power is, I don't know, I couldn't define it, but who could define nature, the universe and everything? So this vital step was also the means by which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven, no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on this step with our sponsors or spiritual advisors that we first felt truly able to forgive others, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all-round forgiveness was desirable, but it was only when we absolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we'd be able to receive forgiveness and give it too. And that's it. You know, if we actually start to develop, well, do you develop humility? We do develop the ability to learn again, and with humility we can find good conscience, and with humility we make progress, because it's all about learning. And learning means that we have to forgive old attitudes and behaviours, or we find ourselves stuck yet again, judging ourselves so harshly that we won't forgive ourselves, which means that we can judge and never forgive anybody else. So it's a two-way street, always. Forgiveness of self and others, for whatever it was, because if we are stuck, and we can't move on. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Therefore, our first practical move towards humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies in what we did. No defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is, but we shall have to do more than see. Knowing is not enough, it's what we do next. The objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. All of us saw, for example, that we lacked honesty and tolerance, that we were beset at times by attacks of self-pity or delusions or personal grandeur. In other words, we could go down into the depths of depression or think we were the absolute answer to everything that's going on in the world. And if you've ever watched the news and thought to yourself, why on earth are those people doing what they're doing? What would I do in that situation, or what would I do if I were in power? We all have an attitude of how it should be, or could be. But then again, don't all those people who are struggling with it have their own attitudes and opinions too? So we have to ask ourselves, why are we judging? What can we do in terms of action for ourselves and others around us? Carrying on, the objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. But while this was a humiliating experience, it didn't necessarily mean that we had yet acquired much actual humility. Though now recognised, our defects were still there. Something had to be done about them, and we soon found that we could not wish them or will them away by ourselves. So in other words, we're stuck with the problem until we actually take some action and share about it. More realism and therefore more honesty about ourselves are the great gains we make under the influence of step 5. As we took inventory, we began to suspect how much trouble self-delusion had been causing us. This had brought a disturbing reflection. If all our lives we had more or less fooled ourselves, how could we now be so sure that we weren't still self-deceived? How could we be certain that we had made a true catalogue of our defects and had really admitted them, even to ourselves, because we were still bothered by fear, self-pity and hurt feelings? It was probable we couldn't appraise ourselves fairly at all. Too much guilt and remorse might cause us to dramatise and exaggerate our shortcomings. And shortcomings are not enough of something. So, not enough truth in my life, not enough love, a real understanding of love, and not enough wisdom coming from other people. Our anger and hurt pride might be the smokescreen under which we were still hiding some of our defects while we blamed others for them. Possibly too, we were still handicapped by many liabilities, great and small, we had never knew we had. So the problem with doing a self-appraisal and finding out what the assets and liabilities are, sometimes we unearth more than we ever thought. And they can come in all different categories based on sharing our life experience and what went on. Hence it was the most evident that a solitary self-appraisal and the admission of our defects based upon that alone wouldn't be nearly enough. We had to have outside help if we were to study, to know and admit the truth about ourselves, the help of God and another human being. Only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing, only by being willing to take advice and accept direction, could we set foot on the road to straight thinking, solid honesty and genuine humility. And, truth is bigger than anyone. What we have inside is an opinion based on what we see of the truth, what we see of what is around us. But it is self-serving, so we see it through our own eyes. And what step 5 does, We share it and we see it through the eyes of another person. And then we start to actually ask ourselves in good conscience what went on, not to blame anyone, but to find out why it happened, and would we like to change what happens next. So it's all about the next step. Yet many of us still hung back. We said, why can't God, as we understand him, tell us where we are astray? If the Creator gave us our lives in the first place, then he must know in every detail where we have since gone wrong. Why don't we make our admissions to him directly? Why do we need to bring anyone else into this? How else will we find truth, love and wisdom? Because if we only have our own point of view of truth, love and wisdom, surely that is just narrowed by our life experience. What we need is a broader understanding of how our life experience fits with truth, love and wisdom. So at this stage, the differences of trying to deal rightly with God by ourselves are twofold. Though we may at first be startled to realise that God knows all about us, we are apt to get used to that quite quickly. Somehow being alone with God doesn't seem as embarrassing as facing up to another person. Until we actually sit down and talk aloud about what we have so long hidden, our willingness to clean house is still largely theoretical. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. So it's letting up and letting go the secrets that kept us stuck in old behaviour, feeling angry and resentful, and possibly going back for another venture into drinking. The second difficulty is this: what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalisation and wishful thinking. And this is also about prayer and meditation, which comes later in the programme, if you like, but for me it's also part of every day. Prayer and meditation, if we ask for things which are selfish, or rather than asking for generally, let's have a good day everybody, let us all have a good day and see how we may fit together, that would be better than saying, dear God, please make it so. It doesn't work like that. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his direct comment and counsel on our situation, God working through people. And there can be no doubt in our minds what that advice is. Going it alone in spiritual matters is dangerous, because we only get our opinion and not the truth. How many times have we heard well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God, when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken? Lacking both practice and humility, they had deluded themselves and were able to justify the most arrant nonsense on the ground that this was what God had told them. Absolutely right, because our own personal opinion is not what God tells us. We have a good conscience which says, in the big picture of life, how might it be? It's not about what I deserve or think I deserve, because that is a personal desire. It's what does this situation need? What do I need to learn from it? How do I fit in, become part of it, and move forward and progress? It is worth noting that people of very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they feel they have received from God. Yes, because that's why we have a fellowship, or it's why we have different religious beliefs, different faiths, different systems of understanding about how to live life. And it's all about understanding from a bigger perspective than one person. So even the most spiritually involved in a particular faith or belief system check out what's going on. Surely then a novice ought not to lay himself open to the chance of making foolish, perhaps tragic blunders in this fashion. While the comment or advice of others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than any direct guidance we may receive while we are still so inexperienced in establishing contact with a power greater than ourselves. And you know, the power greater than ourselves is all around us all the time. It's always in the now. So the spiritual connection to living, for me, just for me, you work it out for yourself, your own personal way. Spiritual is everything about now. It's living in the present moment, ever present, imperfectly perfect moment of now. And the power greater than me is everything around me. So I have to keep my senses alert to what is going on and not have my head closed down, thinking it's all about me, because it's not. Yeah. While the comment or advice of others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than any direct guidance we may receive while we are still so inexperienced in establishing contact with a power greater than ourselves. Our next problem will be to discover the person in whom we are to confide. Here we ought to take much care, remembering that prudence is a virtue which carries a high rating. Prudence is a virtue which carries a high rating. Perhaps we shall need to share with this person facts about ourselves which no others ought to know. We shall want to speak with someone who is experienced, who not only has stayed dry, but has been able to surmount other serious difficulties perhaps like our own. This person may turn out to be one's sponsor, but not necessarily so. If you have developed a high confidence in him, and his temperament and problems are close to your own, then such a choice will be good. Besides, your sponsor already has the advantage of knowing something about your case. Now, for me, it was a bit different, because my way into the fellowship was tormented and fragmented. And all my life, most of the work that I did was based on learning the truth, love and wisdom of now. It wasn't religious, but it was based on principles of integrity, open-mindedness, fair dealing and honesty. And I thought I was a fairly honest person. Outwardly, in the sense of out there in the big world, commercially, I had very strong principles, and they got tormented, and I got tormented, and I had to struggle because people didn't live to the ethics I felt were right. As one person said to me, "How can I be your friend when your standards are so high?" And I didn't realise I was very forgiving of others, not judgmental either, but looking to be a problem solver and a consultant. But along with that I carried the burden always inside as a confidence with everybody, and I had no confessor. So what did I do? I took a bottle of vodka and drank it far too often to cover and push down all the feelings of torment about what I knew and couldn't do anything with. So I was a good candidate, but my torment and aggravation in getting into the fellowship was all about me knowing better than you. I had to stop it. I didn't know better than you, and I didn't know better than other people when it came to sobriety and sorting out the secrets which underpinned my downfall. Anyway, carrying on. So my first confessor, yes, well before the fellowship, and then as the my sort of introduction into the proper fellowship of AA, that is me properly attending and being a part of, my sponsor, I suppose, was not actually in AA, although he knew all about it, and we did I did my step 4 with him, and I shared my secrets with him. At least I thought they were secrets. I was very surprised to find out that most people knew me inside out, and everything I'd done, which was a surprise and a relief. Anyway, carrying on with step 5, our next problem was to be to discover the person in whom we are to confide. Yes. Perhaps, though, your relation to him is such that you would care to reveal only a part of your story. If this is the situation, by all means do so, for you ought to make a beginning as soon as you can. Yeah, confession is blinking good for the soul. For me, anyway. I have to say me, because I don't want to impose my views or opinions on you. It's what appears and becomes the truth for you, not for me. I've got my truth, and it keeps on changing every day as people tell me and share with me about what I do and my actions. It may turn out, however, that you'll choose someone else for the difficult and deeper revelations. This individual may be entirely outside of AA. For example, your clergyman or your doctor. For some of us, a complete stranger may prove the best bet. And again, it's about getting it out of us so we can deal with it and get some reflection. So I had doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, psychoanalyst, you name it, along the way before fellowship for me, because I was involved in helping people. And what I didn't realise is it was far better and easier to look at other people than look at me. And even when I went and was involved in all the processes to try and understand me, I always put myself I sort of separated my insides from my outsides. So I shared in a general way about what was me, but never the personal torment of loneliness and fear. I'm glad I do now, because it's okay to be lonely and fearful. And then when we say it and express it in a fellowship meeting for me, or express it to a friend in fellowship, I'm no longer lonely and I'm no longer fearful, because they are on my side, because there aren't any sides after all. The real test of the situation are your own willingness to confide and your full confidence in the one with whom you share. Your first accurate self-survey. Even when you've found the person, it frequently takes great resolution to approach him or her. No one ought to say the AA program requires willpower. No willpower. Here is one place you may require all you've got. That is the will to speak the truth and let the secrets out which are burning and keeping us stuck. Happily, though, the chances are that you will be in for a very pleasant surprise. When your mission is carefully explained, and it is seen by the recipient of your confidence how helpful he can really be, the conversation will start easily and will soon become eager. Before long, your listener may well tell a story or two about himself, which will place you even more at ease. Providing you hold back nothing, your sense of relief will mount from minute to minute. The dammed up emotions of the years break out of their confinement and miraculously vanish as soon as they are exposed. As the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes place, and when humility and serenity are so combined, humility is about learning and being human and right-sized, and serenity are so combined, that is acceptance of oneself, accepting myself as I am, so assets and liabilities, and letting out the secrets. I'm human again and I can start afresh. And if we do this daily, it means we're not building up mountains of trouble for the future like we did in the past. Yes, and when humility and serenity are so combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Many an AA, once agnostic or atheist, tells us that it was during this stage of step 5 that he first actually felt the presence of God, or in my case the presence of nature and providence through truth, love and wisdom being shared, a greater collective of good conscience, and that for me is God, truth, love and wisdom. That's just me, so please, it's about finding out for yourself what will work for you. And God is as we believe. I don't know that anybody could define God, and that's not the answer. It's about how we make most of life with freedom and interdependence with our fellows. And even those who had faith already often become conscious of God as they never were before. And it's about a sense of belonging to the human race, I guess. It's a feeling of inclusion. This feeling of being at one with God and man, this emerging from isolation through the open and honest sharing of our terrible burden of guilt, brings us to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps towards a full and meaningful sobriety. And that's step 5. I mean, when you think about it, step 4 takes a while to do, because it's doing a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. It's showing up what worked for us and what didn't work for us in the past, unearthing those feelings and secrets that were keeping us stuck, and then step 5, sharing them with another human being. It's quite an order, but we do it, and what do we find? Take the alcohol away, and there's still a lot to do. And without alcohol, we don't have to hide, cover up, suppress. We actually chew on our feelings a lot because they're new to us. You know, we have extremes of feeling, extremes of anger and resentment, extremes of joyfulness, but then it's new to us, and then gradually through time our feelings start to come somewhere in the middle, and we start to feel life as it is, life on life's terms today. So that's it. Step 5 a shorter reading than step 4, thank goodness, you may be saying. But step 5 really is a gateway. It's letting it all out and saying to ourselves, okay, we are human. What is this thing called forgiveness? If I forgive myself, I can't judge others. I may judge what is right for me, but judging others and their behaviour and then saying it's all your fault and no forgiveness means that we get stuck on 5 and then we go backwards to 4, and we can be half a person with half our feelings. So step 5, we start to say it's okay to feel everything, life on life's term, let's live in reality. Let's have our conscious contact with a higher power, good conscience, the inner voice within us which says, okay, so what's the big picture of this? And if I work hard with freedom to make some good choices, what can I do today? So there we go. At the end of these videos I share the Serenity Prayer. As you come to understand God, this is how it works for me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me is always in the moment and just for today.